What is up, everybody? This is the Farm Talk podcast. We are here to talk to you about all things Stanford, all things Pac-12, and Jordan. It's been a little tough on the farm. Our farm, if this was a real farm, we would not be thriving with crops. Let's just say that. Well, at least one of our crops want to be thriving. Our basketball crops and our other sport crops are thriving right now. So shout out to like women's water polo and women's golf, I believe, are coming off natties. But the sport that we are currently forced to focus on is college football. And our college football team at Stanford has not been doing so well. They lost their most recent game 52-14 to Washington State. Jordan, what did you take away from that game? Positives, maybe negatives. I'm sure there's a few negatives to take away, and just everything in general that you took away from that game.
I'm going to be the positive one because I think that's what we need, for this program right now. You saw a lot of young players do a lot of good things and put some good stuff on tape. Again, I think you've seen it a few weeks now. David Bailey has really, really shown the reason why he had so much promise and so many expectations coming onto campus. And I think that, he's always flashing, but especially these last few weeks, he's really come across. There have been a couple other defensive players that have done the same thing as well. So that's been great. I think that, offensively, it's even offensively, and I get it, like you said, you talked about the scores, 52-14, and you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean offensively? What good things can you bring up? No, there were still some good moments there too. I mean, Ben Yurcek, he had 90 yards on 8 catches. Elijah Higgins had a big day. You saw the reason why, to an extent, of why a lot of people had hopes, or many high hopes, me included, for this Stanford offensive skill group. You saw a good bit of that in that game. Now, it didn't result in obviously the points that we wanted because of all the turnovers. Obviously, there were a lot of fumbles in that game, but yes, and there were even more. I'll say there was more. But again, I just think that, especially from the young, at least for the defense, I was really impressed with the young guys and how how they played. Especially you think about, they probably didn't expect their role to be as big as it has to be now, dealing with certain injuries. But then on offense, I love to see the fact that some of those big time guys and big time names that we expected to be the big time names, they showed up and helped move the ball.
Yeah, I think I'll be the bad cop, if you will. There were positive moments, but I think you could tell pretty quickly that it just wasn't going to be Stanford's day. Washington State quickly moved the ball down the field with the run game, nonetheless, which is pretty rough considering Washington State came into the game ranked as one of the worst rushing offenses in the country. I think you could just kind of tell where this Stanford team's at. They're injured. They're depleted on both sides of the ball. They're kind of hurting for answers that I just don't think they're going to be able to. There's questions that we won't be able to answer this year, I think, unfortunately, is the issue. Like, I think we're kind of just, it is what it is at this point. To quote the great Tony Soprano, what are you going to do? That kind of feels like what we're at the moment, where it's just like, there's 3 games left. I think technically they still can make a bowl game, but we all know that's it would take a lot for that to happen. They're down to like no running backs. I believe they're only available running back, quote unquote running back, is a reserve safety.
Yeah.
On defense, they lost 4 or 5 players within that first drive. And so I honestly think Stanford just needs to limp to the end of the season, lick their wounds, and kind of continue to build a strong recruiting class, maybe make some changes around the offseason around the staff. Whether that's the head coach David Shaw or everyone on the staff, I feel like if David Shaw gets to stay, I feel like he should definitely change his coordinators. I think it's kind of hard to inherit. Like, I think it'll be hard to change everything, but I think he deserves at least one chance to try to change everything. Or you just got to clean house and kind of go from there, which is kind of what the consensus vibe is from the Stanford fan base. But it was a tough loss. I personally thought that they had a chance to win that game. I thought they would be able to pressure Cam Ward. I thought they would be able to take advantage of that poor run offense. I didn't realize that Washington State had a 300-yard rushing game in them, and so that was pretty tough to see. It was hard to watch in person. The stadium was pretty depleted. Everybody started leaving around the second or even third quarter, and so it was just tough all around. I think they're at their lick their wounds and move on to next year state of the season. Jordan, would you agree with that?
No, and I mean the reason why I say that is I'll never say you look forward to the next season. There are games to be played, and there are a lot of things you can take from those games. I mean, it's like you said. Well, are they on the outside looking in terms of bowl eligibility? Absolutely. Is it a very tough game coming up? And we're going to get into it, later on in the show. Absolutely. But what's one thing that we've seen in this conference? Sometimes the unexpected. Anything can happen, exactly. So, but also too, it's just I think with some of these pieces on this team. Again, we talked about how some of the young players on defense really stood out and popped last weekend. It really has been the last few weeks.
Yeah,
these next few games, that's a big thing for them. It's big to get that experience. I mean, if you want to look at another Bay Area team in a different sport, the Warriors, now all of a sudden everybody's freaking out, right? Because the young guys for the Warriors don't have the experience to be ready to go in certain situations, right? So, no, having those game reps can be a really big deal. Plus, again, like I said, you never know. And also, you still have, and I'm not trying to look past Utah when I say this. You still have a very big rivalry game left on the schedule. Next week, you got to go to Cal up in Berkeley. So, no, there's still a lot of reason why they shouldn't just be looking forward to next year.
Yeah, I totally get that. And when I say look forward to next year, I guess that's a little like give up vibes. And I'm not saying they should give up. I think this team needs to kind of look towards the future in terms of get more young guys on the field. We're seeing it I think on defense, the young guys are playing better than I would have expected. On offense, the young guys just aren't ready. Ashton Daniels, he had his moments. He also turned the ball over. Yeah. And I think in terms of the young guys, like Arlen Harris leaving the transfer portal, this would have been a prime time for him to get some playing time. Brennan Barrow not really getting playing time until it was slim pickings. It felt like at running back. I think this would be the time to start plugging in these young freshmen to kind of see what they can do. But yeah, it's tough because you don't want to give up, but at the same time, I think based on where the team is at, I feel like it's hard not to think about the future, especially for the players where it's especially the guys who are coming back next year. For the seniors and stuff who this is their last year, they obviously want to go all out these 3 games and maybe make a bowl game. But for maybe the guys that are coming back next year, it's well, we always got next year. And so I think they just need a reset, and maybe a big win in Utah could kind of revitalize them, because if you could beat Utah, you could beat anyone. Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. I will say that going to Utah at this time is not ideal. Sure. I don't feel like that's a hot take by any means. And so I think Stanford honestly, it all comes down to Tanner McKee for me. And this has been I won't say he's been a disappointment this season, but I will say I've been underwhelmed by his performances. They've expected a lot from him, and he really hasn't been able to deliver that. And it's not fair to expect as much as they have been expecting from him, which is to throw 60 passes a game or 50 passes a game and kind of have these perfect games. But I mean, if anyone were to have these games, it would be him. And so I think they need something out of him, I would say. Would you agree with that?
I mean, they for sure do. I mean, again, going into it, obviously we all know Tanner as this top 2, top 3 round prospect for next year's draft. But even with that, I think the whole premise of what, again, going into this year, I had high expectations for this offense in particular. The reason why is because you thought there was going to be a good balance, right? And the balance was going to be, they were going to be able to run the ball well, between EJ, and Casey Filkins, and of course the offensive line. And then you can marry that with all of the weapons that Tanner has around him, plus of course Tanner himself. Well,
Yeah,
that hasn't shaped up to be the case this year.
not at
So
all.
it's, I mean,
Injuries,
even
injuries.
well, yeah, I mean, between injuries and just, I mean, how the performance has been.
Yeah,
And so I think that the role or the job expectation of Tanner McKee, it's changed in that regard. You know, he
yeah,
now has to do a whole lot more than what we probably would have expected him to have to do going into the season for Stanford to be successful. It's not the same anymore. Now that, and obviously that's not all his fault, but of course, since he is a quarterback and he's a highly touted quarterback, he's going to have to like carry that on his shoulders.
right.
But again, I just don't think it's fully fair overall to say like we need more. I mean, of course we do,
Mhm.
but the reasons as to why we need it are not necessarily on him.
Yeah, I mean that's also the tough part of being the quarterback, and
Yeah.
is like you get all the glory when you succeed, and you take all the blame when the team struggles. And so the team's struggling, and honestly, I think Tanner McKee is like the one person that you expect to succeed, given the situation. Like the defense has struggled all year against the run, so excuse me, you don't expect them to all of a sudden just be like lockdown against the run. The secondary struggled. And so it kind of like by process of elimination, it's just the person you turn towards would be Tanner. And
Mhm.
Tanner just hasn't been perfect. And
Sure.
they need near perfection from him, which has
Well,
been tough. And it's obviously unrealistic to expect that from someone, but that's kind of what Stanford's needed this year to win. And so it's been tough. We'll kind of talk about it when we preview the next game, but it's time to kind of look around the Pac-12
let's do
because
it.
these next few weeks, excuse me, are going to be
They're going to be
amazing football.
good.
Yeah, 5 teams vying for 2 spots in the Pac-12 championship. All 5 teams play at least one top 5 team in their remaining 3 games. Some of them play 2. And so we are going to preview the top games around the conference. Starting today with we got a Friday game, Jordan. We
Yep.
got Colorado taking on USC. I'm gonna go USC. They are my pick to win the Pac-12 still.
Mhm.
I feel like this is a Colorado came at a great time for them. They had a couple close ones the past couple weeks against Arizona and Cal, and I think they need to beat up on someone to kind of regain their confidence back.
No, I mean I have USC winning it too, but I will say this: for Colorado, Jordan Tyson, freshman receiver out of Texas. So one of his coaches in Texas was one of my teammates at Stanford. So shout out D'Antonio Jordan, and he was telling me all along before even the year started that hey, like Colorado, they have this one guy. I've been training him, been working with them. He's going to be something. And I think there was a stat for a while, like all of his touchdowns have been from like 40 or 50 yards out. So
They
he's an
play for that.
electric, explosive dude. And
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about, the last few weeks, we talked a lot about how the thing with USC, like, okay, they're probably going to beat you because they can outscore you,
Mhm.
but they'll leave a little bit to be seen defensively.
Oh yeah.
So, I'm hoping to see that Jordan Tyson, the receiver, has a big time game. But yeah, still, it's going to be USC.
Yeah, for sure. I think Colorado also they've changed quarterbacks again. They went back to JT Shrout,
Yep.
who's done well. But yeah, I just again Colorado's similar. I don't say they're in the same position as Stanford because they can't make a bowl game. Like mathematically, they can't.
Hmm.
But I do think that Colorado is kind of same thing with Arizona State. Tough situation. You fired your coach. There's no chance of making a bowl game, so it's all about getting reps in and
Right.
that good stuff. Next game we got Arizona State, Washington State. This is essentially Arizona State. If they win this game, they still have a chance to make a bowl. Washington State, a win here gets them in a bowl. I think they ride that momentum. I think they found something against Stanford that would probably work against Arizona State, and so I'm going to go Washington State here.
This is an interesting one to me. And the reason why I say that is because I think about the Palouse this time of year, because obviously it's going to be at in Pullman. Not really the best throwing weather
That's
usually
true.
around there.
But
So if I had to ask myself,
they
like,
just found a
who do
run
I?
game.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, it's like, well, who do I think usually like last week aside, has the better run game, or at least the running weapon I trust more, and that would probably be Arizona State.
Oh,
So this is a tricky one, but yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll have to go Washington State. I just think it's gonna be a really close one, goes down to the end, and it's for those reasons.
yeah. I think it'll be a close game. I think finding that run game, I definitely think helped Washington State for the future of their season. I think they
Mhm.
might string together 3 or 4 wins in a row right here, just because that was something that they really hadn't tapped into, and so I think they
Sure.
found a lead back, and then they found what worked, and kind of a momentum builder. Moving on to Washington and Oregon, top 25 matchup. Number 25, Washington taking on number 6, Oregon. I'm going to go Oregon. I think this is kind of Oregon's year. I don't know if they're as good as Bo Nix says they are, where they could beat Georgia, but I don't know if anybody could beat Georgia at the moment. And so, but I like Oregon a lot. Also, if I was a gambling man, this would be an over bet for me.
Mm.
I think this game is going to gracefully touch that over.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I mean, obviously, you talk about Washington's offense and what they bring to the table. You talk about who I think again is my Heisman front runner right now, Bo Nix.
Oh,
And what I mean, no, I mean, I like. Let's
it's
be
fair.
honest.
He's
We,
tearing it up.
we have to be honest about it, right? Look at the numbers that he's put up.
Right.
Again, he's only had one stinker performance, which was against Georgia. Now, if
Week
we
one
want
of
to
all
in
wins.
week one, yes. So, like, if we want to look at some other Heisman hopefuls, okay,
Yep.
C.J. Stroud, how did he look last week against Northwestern?
Not great.
Is
Not great.
Northwestern comparable to Georgia in terms of defense and how they are? No,
Um,
okay, I didn't think
the
so.
only
Uh,
person out there is Drake May from UNC, and I just
and
don't. He has. I don't know if they've won enough because it's also kind of who wins the most.
I mean, they're 8-1. I guess the thing for that though with Drake May is like he has to an extent,
Mhm.
a Christian McCaffrey effect of you're getting this hype later in the
Yep.
year. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that to say that it was right that Christian didn't win Heisman. No, it was wrong. I love
Yep.
Derrick Henry, phenomenal running back, but no, Christian McCaffrey
Right.
should have won Heisman. But that's the thing. I mean, we were talking about Christian, and you see the numbers that Christian put up. He beat and broke Barry Sanders' record. Now, everyone's saying, like, well, yeah, the bowl game counted. Okay, well, the bowl games counted for a lot of other players ever since Barry Sanders played, and nobody came close
Right.
the way that he did.
Yeah.
So,
This is the
uh,
most open the Heisman has been in
I
some,
agree.
which I
I
like. I
agree.
feel like
I do too.
usually by now it's like, oh, it's so and so's award to lose, and so I like
Sure.
this. Bo Nix is 2 or 3 more performances away from like forcing people to have to pick him. I think he should be the front runner. I don't know if he will be.
No,
As
I
it's
agree with that,
also
and that's also why I prefaced it as he's my front runner.
yeah, a
Um,
good preface there. Is your front runner winning this game though? You got
yes,
Oregon winning. I
I
like
do
it.
because I really just think that at this point in time, Oregon's offense, they're just rolling.
They
They
are.
they they're rolling. They're hot. Obviously, Bo Nix is a big part of that. I mean, we saw what he did last week, throwing for a touchdown, running for a touchdown,
Right.
catching a touchdown.
Right.
Um,
Doing it
which
all.
I think as a quarterback, that hasn't happened since Kevin Hogan did it in 2015 in the Pac-12 championship against USC. I might be wrong about that, but at least from a quarterback standpoint, funny
Marcus
enough,
Marcus Mariota also had a receiving touchdown when he won the Heisman.
that's true. So funny enough, Stanford, that game, we had a pair of teammates that did that.
Oh,
So Kevin Hogan did it.
right.
Who's the other one that did it?
I want to go Christian or Bryce Love. I don't remember who the running back was. It
It was
was one of
Christian
those two.
McCaffrey. It
Yep.
was
I
Christian
was gonna say
McCaffrey.
it's Christian or Bryce.
So you know what's the funnier part of like to keep going with that, like to keep making things a little interesting.
Hmm.
He did that against a team from Southern California, and it
Oh,
happened at Levi Stadium.
oh,
Now let's bring all that in back to what's going on now. Well, what's Christian's home stadium now? It's Levi Stadium.
Levi Stadium.
Now, just a couple weeks ago, because they had the bye week last week, he threw, caught, and ran for a touchdown. Who did he do that against? The LA Rams, the Southern California team. Pretty interesting.
That was very interesting. Christian McCaffrey
Uh,
went off last week.
and
Yeah,
they needed every
I-
single thing he could bring them.
I think that game came at the right time for the 49ers. I think a big game from Bo Nix would really help Oregon right here, especially playoff
Oh yeah.
standings wise. The other Oregon school, Oregon State, is hosting Cal. I really like Oregon State. I think they I don't love their quarterback situation, but I feel like they figured it out enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think they're going to beat Cal. Cal, I've said it multiple times. They're sub 500 when Jaden Ott doesn't run for over 100 yards, and Oregon State's kind of got a stout defense going. So I'm going Oregon State there.
So we've now reached the point in the show where I have to at least eventually we have to disagree. So I'm just gonna do it in this case, and here's the reason why I'll do it. So first and foremost, I mean, you look at what Cal does have on the outside. It's not like they don't have talent at
Right.
receiver, with Hunter, Sturdivant, all of them. And of course, Jaden Ott is really the one that makes everything happen. I think the big thing for Cal here is they have a chance to shorten the game. And I think you have two teams that have a similar mentality and mindset in terms of we're going to try to punish you, try to run the ball, shorten the clock. Okay, well, usually in things like that, if that's the case, the underdog in that, they have a better chance at getting it. So that's why, like I said, we're at the point where we're going to have to, at least eventually, we can't have a show where we just agree on every pick, because I think we're going to agree on the last pick. So this is going to be the one where I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to go.
I have to ride the Beavers because I didn't ride them enough at the beginning of the season.
Fair enough.
I bet against them twice against Mountain West opponents. So now I got to ride the Beavers. And so unfortunately, I'm making you have to pick Stanford's biggest rival, but
yeah, I know.
It comes at a cost. And then we have Arizona, UCLA. I think UCLA is firmly one of the best teams in the country. I always figured they'd have their slip up, and I don't know if they're going to have that slip up this year, at least not yet.
Well, I mean, the reason why you thought they had the slip up, I remember we talked about this a few weeks back, was because you were waiting for that DTR game.
I was a hater.
And again, it's just I don't think, again, as much experience as he has now, I don't think that DTR game is a thing anymore. I just really don't. Now, I will say this.
They're both.
Well, yeah, you're right. Exactly. It's like Bo Nix. I will say this, though. Arizona has a lot of firepower on offense.
They're upsetting. So I think they're upsetty. They could upset someone.
Sure. Yes.
I think Jacob Cowing being banged up is kind of what's holding me off from making that call, though.
No, absolutely. I think with that, I'm not going to say that they're going to win. I think that it's just going to be a fun, high-scoring game because of that. But UCLA is still going to win. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be too much Zach Charbonnet. It's going to be way too much.
When you can run the ball and just impose your will and get 8 yards a carry, it's hard to beat you. And then our final topic of the day, Jordan, we have Stanford visiting number 13 Utah. Let's just get this out of the way. I think Utah will win. It's at home. Utah is kind of in a mode where they cannot lose a game. They have no room to lose anymore if they want to make the playoff, or even if they want to make the Pac-12 championship. They have no room for error. And so I think they come in really focused. They've been able to run the ball with everyone. It seems like even when Tavian Thomas can't go, they have Jaquindon Jackson. Cam Rising is ready as always, even though he decided to sit out against Washington State. But yeah, I think this Utah team's a really tough matchup for Stanford. They have a really good run defense. They have a really good defense in general. Clark Phillips is probably the best corner in the country. And their offense is good. And I think that's going to be a tough matchup for Stanford.
So, honestly, talking about this matchup is a little hard for me. And the reason why I say that is because I think back to when I was on campus. And, again, the whole name to our game was physicality.
Yep.
That's what we were. I mean, obviously, there was the whole thing welcome to the home of intellectual brutality, right? That was the whole thing for Stanford. And this last few years, we're still intellectual.
Yeah, it's just not physical.
It hasn't really been a lot of brutality, because I used to always say, look, at the end of the day, I thought there was only one team that could either match or better our sense of physicality in this conference. And, honestly, for the most part, around the country, it was Utah. That's why, like, those games used to be as close as they were.
Mhm.
Well, now it's the case, unfortunately, we're not as physical as we used to be. Now, I'm sure everyone has their reasons. They want to blame this person, this reason, that reason. I'm not here to do that. I'm just saying it's the case. We're not.
Mhm.
So, and I know obviously Stanford, they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. I totally get that.
I'm
Now,
pretty sure I'm going to get the nod at running back pretty soon here.
I mean, you really just might. I mean, I would try to go for running back, but I'm out of eligibility. But here's the thing for me. For Utah, here are some people that have missed games due to injury. Cameron Rising, Tavion Thomas, Dalton Kincaid, Brant Keithy, Clark Phillips, who you talked about, who, next year, because he's only a sophomore, next year is probably going to be the first corner taken off the board. He's that good.
Right.
Yet Utah still finds a way to get it done.
Yeah.
And
it's next man up. Like everybody says next man up, but for them it's literally like next man up, and that person's always ready.
yes. So it's like I said, it's hard. My whole goal for this and like my hope for this is that, Stanford, honestly, like if I gotta say it, and it's not just me saying that, this is a lot of alum of the program that I've talked to about it. Look, it's time to answer the bell. I get it. We're short-handed. I fully understand that. The one thing that we want to see is just like give me the all-out effort, right? So like there was this one play. I know we talked about the Rams-Niners game. There was one play, Fred Warner, he started at like the right hash, I think it was. Sprints over basically to the other sideline and makes this big hit. Now everybody else is going crazy about it, and I was sitting there. I was like, "Okay, cool. It was a good play, but that's what he's supposed to do."
Yeah,
effort plays like that, and I mean that's what we built our program off of, right? Making those extra efforts, making those hustles, like because you never know when it can make a difference.
Right.
That's what we need to see and what we want to see out of this game. Like just if you play like your hair is on fire, I was going to use another phrase, but try not to cuss. So if you play like your hair is on fire, good things could happen. You never know.
It's true. Utah was, I mean, it was without Cam Rising, but they almost lost to Washington State a couple weeks ago.
They did. Plus, again, like I said, it's a night game. You never know what's going to happen at a night game. So you might as well just give it your all, put it all out there. Again, try to like one of the words we used to use all the time is strain. You have to strain for that extra second. Maybe it's that extra second on a pass protection. Maybe it's that extra strain on a short yardage situation if you're the defensive lineman. Maybe it's a strain for that extra half a second if you're a DB and Rising rolls out to try to make something happen. You have to find a way to give that maximum effort and make things happen. Because I really do think, like you talked about momentum going to next year. I'm talking about momentum going to next week.
Right.
If you make those efforts and it shows up on tape and you see positive results on tape, that is such a positive feedback that you can get where it's like, wow, okay, no, we do this and this is the result we get. I want to keep doing it. I want to keep making that happen. So that's what I want to see tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the defense, I'm looking for David Bailey. He's been very fiery as of late. He had a late roughing the passer call the other day, but he was also yelling at the team, trying to get everybody pumped up. And I think they just need new leaders to emerge. There's nothing wrong with the current leaders. I just think that it's like a new era of leadership is going to arise. And I think this could be the game where that comes.
Well, I feel like even with that, I mean, usually what we had was in a locker room, Shane Scove, who, well, if you're listening to this podcast, Shane Scove is, shame on you. But, he was, middle linebacker, number 11 for my earlier years at Stanford. He was there a little before I was too. He was the guy that in the pregame, just in the locker room, he would always give us this little, a speech, get us going, get our juices flowing, get us ready to go. But once the game started, those teams didn't need that. It shouldn't have been someone walking around saying, like, come on, like, we need to get going. We need to get something. Like, everyone knew it. Everyone felt it. I mean, again, to make a comparison with a Bay Area team, I remember there was I think it was the COVID year when fans weren't allowed back into the arenas just
Right,
yet.
right.
It was the year after the bubble, and there was this one video, and everyone saw Steph like yelling at the bench, and Steph was just like, "Come on, like what's going on? Like
Yeah.
pick it up." And no, but that's the thing. Like Stanford, for the most part, some of those teams we didn't need that on game day.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the
It's
point of like, well, if it's to that point where they need it now, I need everybody to feel that sense of urgency.
right.
Not just a David Bailey or maybe this other player who might be trying to do that too, or this other player. It's got to be everybody.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing because we think of Stanford right now, or at least I do, is like obviously they're one loss away from their season like being not over, but one loss and you're out of contention for a bowl game. But
Yep.
you're also 3 wins away from a bowl game. And it's like one win here, that's momentum. You could beat Cal, momentum, and then BYU struggling this year.
BYU. Yeah.
All about momentum. I think we'll learn a lot tomorrow about where this team and where this program is. We don't want to get into any discussions of who's on the hot seat, who's not on the hot seat until that discussion actually has to happen. And so, Jordan, let's hope for a good Stanford game tomorrow. It's going to be a tough environment, but I think they could do it. You think they could do it?
Well, look, I mean, obviously the unfortunate part is usually in a game like this, I would say like you would want to trust a run game to control the clock
You got
and
to air raid this baby. Air raid this
yeah.
thing.
But again, it's the thing is you have the talented quarterback. You still, I know Michael Wilson went down, but
Yep.
you still have a lot of talent at your skill positions where you
Oh, yeah.
can make it work and you can make it happen. Now, don't get me wrong. Like if someone were to ask me like straight up, who do you think is going to win, Utah or Stanford? I'm going to pick Utah.
Yeah.
But am I going to sit here and say that Stanford has no chance of winning this game? Absolutely not. I'm not going to do that.
This is a momentum building game for them.
Yes.
Every game it just takes a couple things to go your way. I think last game too was like probably the worst game they've played all year in terms of turnovers because it wasn't even that Washington State was that much better. It's just they kept giving them chances, and
Yes.
you give offenses chances from within their own 40-yard line. It's gonna not work out so well for you. And so I think Stanford protects the ball a little bit better, less fumbles, and this game might be closer than people expect. And I fully expect a solid Stanford effort. I think people expect them to give up, and I don't think that's happening.
Well, I mean, I'll give if there was ever a chance that anybody on the team listens to this, I'll give them this too. So 2014, the year before we went to that Rose Bowl against Iowa, it was a underachieving year to say the least. With the talent we had on that team, and again, if you want to look up that roster, see all the players we had that went to the league on that roster, it was an underachieving year. But one thing I think that helped us is that the last like 3 or 4 games we went on this winning streak. We got rolling. We beat UCLA, we beat Maryland in the Foster Farms Bowl. That kind of set the tempo for that next year. Now, of course, next year started. We lose to Northwestern in that early game. All right, cool is what it is. But we got rolling and we felt confident enough in ourselves because of how we performed that year, like to finish off that past year. So for y'all, like again, maybe they feel like it's Utah, like we might not win this. It's like you can't have that because again, like you said, for some of the players that are coming back, these games mean a lot. Obviously, first and foremost, you have a chance to go up against a top 15 team. Anytime you have
ruin someone's season.
Well, that's the thing. Anytime you have a chance to go up against a top 15 team or a highly ranked team, it's a blessing. And you have to take advantage of that. Next week after that, you have a chance to get the axe back. Okay. Like, I don't know, like Kevin, I know you've been on Stanford's campus a bit now. We proudly show that axe in front of the Hall of Champions where they have it now. We proudly show it when we have
Champions is empty right now. It's missing an axe right now.
We're missing something. And then, of course, last but not least, you're going against BYU. I know they're having a down year, but that's another one of those programs, at least on the West Coast, they are highly thought of. They're a very proud program. That would still say something. I don't care what their record is. That would still say something you beat them to.
Yeah,
So there's still a lot there to go. And again, it's if you get some wins in these last few weeks, the momentum that they can carry into next year, into the off season, lifting the weights and 6 a.m.s and all the other stuff that they do, it matters.
Yeah,
It really matters.
totally agree. A lot of momentum to be had. We'll find out this weekend. This has been the Farm Talk podcast. We appreciate you guys for joining us.
Yes.
We'll be talking all things Stanford every week like we normally do. And Jordan, let's wish our guys in the Cardinals some good luck, and we'll catch our listeners and viewers next week.
Let's do it, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy Veterans Day, especially to all those who either have or continue to serve. We appreciate the sacrifices that you give so we can have our freedom. So thank you.
Yep. Sign off.